Hello, and welcome. Sometimes you just wanna get to sleep early. It's middle of the night, 12 o'clock here, but then you just surf the internet and you find something you just have to comment on. I have to just read you this article. I haven't read this whole way through yet, but this is something I really wanna talk about because I think actually, for example, Mundane Matt make a really good point that if we are afraid of this YouTube Heroes program, that it might be unfairly used against certain type of political speech or whatever, which I think is a genuine fear for many people, and silence just certain kind of think or whatever. So you should basically read all these rules so you know what they can do and what they can't and such, so that then you can defend yourself when you know how the rules are played if someone uses some kind of violation of the rules to get to you or whatever. So I think that's a good idea. And on that thought, I really want to read you this article because this really gives you the mindset that where the internet is going in the future and what kind of things are happening around us. So I'll just start right out and I will comment if there's something really interesting I want to add to something. Inside Google's Internet Justice League and its AI-powered war on trolls. Around midnight one Saturday in January, Sarah Yang was on her couch browsing Twitter when she spontaneously wrote what she now bitterly refers to as the tweet that launched 1,000 ships. The 28-year-old journalist and author of Internet Garbage, a book on spam and online harassment, had been watching Bernie Sanders boosters attacking feminists and supporters of the Black Lives Matter movement in what was meant to be a hyperbolic joke. She tweeted out a list of political characters, one of which called the typical Sanders fan vitriolic crypto racist who spends 20 hours a day on the internet yelling at women. Well, she certainly was right there because then they, surprise, started yelling at women. But I mean, this is just the basic bullshit you see all the time. I mean, you just attack a group of people, you say very offensive things to them, and then when they come back and tell you fuck off and we really don't like you, but with much harsher words, then you are crying daddy, basically. So that this seems really self-inflicted, because of course if you say stupid things in the internet and harass people or whatever, then they will harass you back, of course. Like, that's even in real life. If you go and hit someone, they'll hit you back, and then it's still your fault what happens, and you shouldn't hit people. But this is the same thing, that if you can deal it, you will be dealt. But this is the typical thing that feminists or whatever write something, hate on white men basically, or whatever, and then when they get cyberbullied, which is sometimes only like people disagree, and sometimes horrible death threats, etc. I'm not denying that at all, but in the cases if it's this self-inflicted, and there's even a clear way to see how this person could use this to make money, because a lot of these times then when they claim these death threats and stuff and cry in public that oh my god, I was attacked, people harassed me on the internet, etc. They can just start up a Patreon and ask for some donation money. And some of these, for example, the original people that started the Gamergate, like the journalists that had these ethics things and game makers, then those feminists there do have Patreon accounts, and they don't make, like, for example, necessarily any videos or articles, but people just give them money because they feel pity because they are bullied in the internet. But yeah, so there's that, but I'm not saying that there are a lot of very very obvious cases also where it's very self-inflicted, and in this day and age when people can get fired when they are condemned as racist, then whatever crypto racist is not a good thing to say anyone is. I'm not sure even she knows what crypto racist is, but whatever, let's continue. The ill-advised late night tweet was, Jeong admits provocative and absurd. She even supported Sanders, but what happened next was the kind of backlash that is all too familiar to women, minorities, and anyone who has a strong opinion online. By the time Yeong went to sleep, a swarm of Sanders supporters were calling her neoliberal shill. By sunrise, a broader, darker wave of abuse had begun. She received nude photos and links to disturbing videos. One troll promised to rip each one of her hairs out and twist her tits clear off. So you can see that it gets very serious. The attacks continued for weeks. I was in crisis mode, she recalls. So she did what many victims of mass harassment do. She gave up and let her abusers have the last word. Jeong made her tweets private, removing herself from the public conversation for a month. And she took a 2-week unpaid leave from her job as a contributor to the tech news in the site Motherboard. For years now, on Twitter and practically any other free-wheeling public forum, the trolls have been out in force. Just in recent months, Trump's anti-Semitic supporters mocked Jewish public figures with menacing Holocaust jokes. They're just jokes. They are offensive jokes, but they are still just jokes, not jokes in quotes. Anonymous racist bullied African-American comedian Leslie Jones off Twitter temporarily with pictures of apes and photoshopped images of semen on her face. Guardian columnist Jessica Valenti quit the service after a horde of the misogynistic attackers resorted to rape threats against her 5-year-old daughter. It's too much, she signed off. I can't live like this. Feminist writer Sadie Doyle says her experience of mass harassment has induced the kind of permanent self-censorship. These are things I won't allow myself to talk about, she says. Names I won't allow myself to say. Very horrible. Jigsaws, Jared Cohen. I want us to feel the responsibility of the burden we are shouldering. Mass harassment online has proved so effective that it's merging as a weapon of repressive governments. In late of 2014, Finnish journalist Jessica Aro reported on Russian's troll farms. Oh my god, I have to read this one next time. Where they laborers regurgitate messages that promote the government's interest in duet opponents with vitriol on every possible outlet, including Twitter and Facebook. In turn, she's been barraged daily by bullies on social media in the comments of news stories via email. They call her a liar, a NATO skank, even a drug dealer after digging up a fine she received 12 years ago for possessing amphetamines. They want to normalize hate speech to create chaos and mistrust, Aro says. It's just a way of making people disillusioned. I don't know. I get the feeling that some horrible things are being done, but also that it's kind of working. Like when people say actually funny jokes and people trigger mad and say very odd and crazy stuff out loud, people see who really is the most sane in the situation. But of course, this can go overboard. So basically, if million people are doing the same strategy of drawing out the bigots and haters of regressive left, then it can go overboard easily and be very, very abusive, I'm sure. But I don't know enough about the details that I can kind of make educated guess that how much of this is actually factually true and how much just a little bit colored, but that is my view at the moment. So, all these abuse, in other words, has evolved into a form of censorship, driving people offline, silencing their voices. So it's not like these people who wanna silence voices. I mean, literally, what they are going after, that this hate speech goes away, is that people don't get to say mean and offensive things online because their feelings are hurt. So who is silencing who? Let's get that straight. You can't write that at all because you are using this argument to silence others because you don't want your feelings hurt. For years, victims have been calling on, clamoring for the companies that created these platforms to help slay the monster they brought to life, but their solutions generally have mounted to Sisyphean game of whack-a-troll. Well, I'm not sure if it would even benefit you that much if you get it to end, because where do you then get your Patreon money when you can't play the victim anymore? I don't know, but it seems horrible business idea for you. Maybe if you get a lot of money, maybe you should take this very raw constructive criticism and ponder on it and count your money and be happy that you get a lot of money, I guess. But I understand that we have to have this show to get you the pity that you get more money, I understand. So I'll just continue reading and giving you the clicks and attention you are looking for. It's okay for me because there's really interesting stuff still going on. So, now a small subsidiary of Google named Jigsaw is about to release an entirely new type of a response, a set of tools called Conversational AI. The software is designed to use machine learning to automatically spot the language of abuse and harassment. With Jigsaw, Wegner say, an accuracy far better than any keyword filter and far faster than any team of human moderators. I want to use the best technology we have at our disposal to begin to take on trolling and other nefarious tactics that give hostile voices disproportionate weight, says Jigsaw founder and president Jared Cohen, to do everything we can to level the playing field. Jigsaw is applying artificial intelligence to solve the very human problem of making people nicer on the internet. Conversation AI represents one of Jigsaw's wildly ambitious projects. The New York-based think tank and tech incubator aims to build products that use Google's massive infrastructure and engineering muscle not to advance the best possibilities of the internet but to fix the worst of it: surveillance, extremist indoctrination and censorship. So they want to add surveillance, they want to have the extremist feminist indoctrination you can get in any university right now, and add the censorship that you can't say anything bad to feminists on the internet. South Park made a really good joke about this in the newest episode, season 20, episode 2. You should really watch it. It nails this on the head. The group sees its work in part as taking on the most intractable jobs in Google's large mission to make the world's information universally accessible and useful. Cohen founded Jigsaw, which now has about 50 staffers, almost half are engineers, after a brief high-profile and controversial career in the US State Department, where he worked to focus American diplomacy on the internet like never before. One of the moonshot goals he set for Jigsaw is to end censorship within a decade, whether it comes in the form of politically motivated cyber attacks on opposition websites or government strangleholds on internet service providers. And if that task isn't daunting enough, Jigsaw is about to unleash Conversation AI on the market challenge of harassment, where the only way to protect some of the web's most repressed voices may be to selectively shut up wrong thinkers, but let's say call them others. if it can find path through that free speech paradox, Jigsaw will have pulled off an unlikely coup, applying artificial intelligence to solve the very human problem of making people nicer on the internet. So, like I said, there are gonna be new rules for the internet, and if these get too restrictive, I'm sure that we will all go to Tor networks or make the new internet. I mean, if governments and these big private companies would collude together to silence voices like me and others that speak about these things, I'm sure we would just jump a hurdle. And think about it, there could be, if you think like me or even entertain the idea that you would think like me sometime, if I can convince you on the points I'm arguing for, then just like remember that I'm suspecting that in 5 years we will see IP bans. I'm going to look them sometime, then find out what I can find out about them. But basically that certain people would be IP banned to certain social media accounts and websites, etc., so that they can really clean these, well, coordinate. That's what they were talking here also. But one form they are gonna implement this at some point will probably be IP bans for people that are misogynistic trolls or wrong thinkers. But that's not still here, and I'm actually sure that basically technology is so advanced that we can escape this hurdle and just make a new internet that is actually anonymous, and we can do what we want. Because yes, they can fuck up this internet, but they can't fuck up free speech in society just so easily. But we'll see. Okay, there's this kind of a picture. Jigsaw is the outgrowth of an earlier effort called Google Ideas, which Google's then CEO Eric Schmidt and Cohen launched in 2010 as a think, do tank. But aside from organizing conferences and creating fancy data visualization, Ideas didn't actually do much at first. People would come around and talk a bunch of bullshit for a couple of days. One Google Ideas conference attendee remembers nothing came out of it. But slowly the group's lofty challenges began to attract engineers, some joining from other parts of Google after volunteering for Cohen's team. One of the first creations was a tool called uProxy that allows anyone whose internet access is censored to bounce their traffic through a friend's connection outside the firewall. It's now used in more than 100 countries. Another tool, Chrome add-on called Password Alert, aims to block phishing by warning people when they are retyping their Gmail password into a malicious lookalike site. The company developed it for Syrian activists targeted by government-friendly hackers, but when it proved effective, it was rolled out to all of Google's users. In February, the group was renamed Jigsaw to reflect its focus on building practical products. A program called Montage lets war correspondence and non-threat crowdsource analysis of YouTube videos to track conflicts and gather evidence of human rights violations. Other free service called Project Shield uses Google servers to absorb government-sponsored cyber attacks intended to take down the websites of media, election monitoring and human rights organizations, and the initiative aimed at de-radicalizing ISIS recruits identifies would-be jihadists based on their search terms, then shows them ads directing them to videos by former extremists who explain the downside of joining an ultraviolet apocalyptic cult. This is fucking golden. So you're just looking at some Saudi Arabian gays being thrown off the roof with their eyes closed or whatever, or people being heads cut off, and you are just masturbating. They're just about to come, and then Google Ads shows you that look at this commercial, and the commercial says that yeah, well, there's one big downside in joining ISIS, and it's that you will be blown to pieces, and it's all over. And then you are like, oh yeah, that's true. I better cancel any plans. I'm horrible, but someone has to say it. So, in a pilot project, the anti-ISIS ads were so effective that they were in some cases 2 to 3 times more likely to be clicked than typical search advertising campaigns that are typically not picked at all, but okay. But then the common thread that binds these projects, Cohen says, is a focus on what he calls vulnerable populations. To that end, he gives new hires an assignment. Draw a scrap of paper from a baseball cap filled with names of the world's most troubled or repressive countries, track down someone under threat there and talk to them about their life online. Then present their stories to other Jigsaw employees. So, horrible virtual signaling that you have to do if you work here, but kinda interesting, I don't know. At one recent meeting, Cohen leans over the conference table as a 15 or so Jigsaw recruits, engineers, designers, and foreign policy wonks prepare to report back from the dark corners of the internet. We are not going to be one of those groups that sits in our office and imagines what vulnerable populations around the world are experiencing, Cohen says. We are going to get to know our users. He speaks in a fast-forward, geeky patter that contrasts with his blue-eyed, broad-shouldered good looks, like a politician disguised as a Silicon Valley executive or vice versa. Every single day I want us to feel the burden of responsibility we are shouldering. We hear about the Albanian LGBT activist who tries to hide his identity on Facebook despite its real name's only policy, and administrators for a Libyan youth group wary of government's infiltrators are defectors' memories from the digital black hole of North Korea. Many of the t-shirt and sandal-wearing Googlers in the room would later be sent to some of those far-flung places to meet their contacts face to face. So they are actually doing like really interesting and I think really good work also, like helping these causes. This is very good and I approve 100%. But I think this is totally a case that basically if you just throw all the bad water away, the child also goes away. Because like that, if you have these elegant and effective tools for this kind of basically manipulation and information gathering and whatever, that if they implement this all against us Western internet users that just wanna spread some Pepe memes to every place and give people happy feelings when the Pepe is understanding in a situation, then it will get kind of fucked up. Like, I can't see that it wouldn't have also like unattended bad consequences, but let's see. So, why are we reading this is that we learn the rules and how we can avoid problems if this is really implemented here on the West. That's the idea. So, let's see. They'll hear stories about people being tortured for their password or a state-sponsored cyberbullying. Cohen tells me later the purpose of these field trips isn't simply to get feedback for future products. He says they are about creating personal investment in otherwise distant, invisible problems. A sense of investment, Cohen says he himself gained in his 20s during his 4-year stint in the State Department, and before that during extensive travel in the Middle East and Africa as a student. Cohen reports directly to Alphabet's top execs, but in practice, Jigsaw functions as Google Blue Sky human rights-focused skunkworks. At the group's launch, Smith declares its audacious mission to be tackling the world's toughest geopolitical problems and listed some of the challenges within its remit: money laundering, organized crime, police brutality, human trafficking, and terrorism. In an interview in Google's New York office, Smith, now chair of Alphabet, summarizes them to me as the problems that bedevil humanity involving information. Jigsaw, in other words, has become Google's Internet Justice League, and it represents the notion that the company is no longer content with merely not being evil. It wants and difficult and even ethically fraud as as the impulse may be to do good. Yeah, so basically Google in their effort to virtual signal has actually come up with something useful, this horrible monster to censor all the internet for everybody. That's kinda scary, the Google's Internet Justice League, so Google's Social Justice Warrior Super Squad that is going to be affected upon us. This is so nice. So, in September of 2015, Jasmine Green, the head of operations and strategy for Google Ideas, the working group that would become Jigsaw, invited 10 women who had been harassment victims to come to the office and discuss their experiences. Some of them had been targeted by members of anti-feminist Gamergate movement. Game developer Sui Quinn had been threatened repeatedly with rape, and her attacks had dug up and distributed old nude photos of her. Another visitor, Anita Sarkeesian, had moved out of her home temporarily because of numerous of death threats. Yeah, when I at start of there talked about that there are these people that don't actually develop articles or whatever and then get a lot of Patreon money, I was referring to this person in particular, but anyway. And this person is quite bad as well. I've done videos about her before, so you should check them out. So, at the end of the session, Green and a few other Google employees took a photo with the woman and posted it to the company's Twitter account. Almost immediately, the Gamergate trolls turned their ire against Google itself. Over the next 48 hours, tens of thousands of comments on Reddit and Twitter demanded that the Googlers be fired for enabling feminazis. It's like you walk into Madison Square Garden and you have 50,000 people saying you suck, you are horrible, die, Green says. If you really believe that's what the universe thinks about you, you'll certainly shut up and you might just take your own life. Oh my god, yes, mean words are being said and you are planning on killing yourself, but not really, but just playing this emotional manipulative game here on the article. Okay, I guess. So, to combat trolling services like Reddit, YouTube and Facebook. Okay, so trolling services like Reddit. So if anyone has about that Reddit cancer forums, etc., it here, even these people think that, even Google thinks that Reddit is a trolling service, just not a real place. Very odd, but anyway. YouTube and Facebook have for years depended on users to flag abuse for review by overworked traffickers of an offshore workforce of content moderators in countries like the Philippines. The task is expensive and can be scarring for the employees who spend days on end reviewing loathsome content, yet often it's still not enough to keep up with the real-time flood of filth. Twitter recently introduced new filters designed to keep users from seeing unwanted tweets, but it's not yet clear whether the move will tame determined trolls. So shadow banning, I think they are referring here. Twitter does shadow ban people. So the meeting with the Gamergate victims was a genesis for another approach. Lucas Dixon, a wide-eyed Scot with a doctorate in machine learning, and product manager Gigi Adams wondered, could an abuse detection AI clean up online conversations by deleting toxic language with all its idiosyncrasies and ambiguities as reliable as humans? To create viable tool, Jigsaw first needed to teach his algorithm to tell the difference between harmless banter and harassment. For that it would need a massive number of examples, so the group partnered with the New York Times, which gave Jigsaw engineers 17 million comments from Time stories, along with data about which of those commenters were flagged as inappropriate by moderators. Jigsaw also... oh my god, so basically... I don't know about New York Times, but let's just pretend and think about this. So, if, for example, it's some kind of a feminist running those admin services, there, and for example, someone writes Harambe, and it's marked just the name Harambe as abusive content, and then this AI learns that Harambe is a really bad thing. So, I hope you can test this somewhere, because I want to know if Harambe very a bad thing to say. But, so, comments from time stories, along with the data of which of those comments were flagged as inappropriate by moderators. TixHub also worked with the Wikimedia Foundation to praise 130,000 snippets of discussion around Wikipedia pages. It showed those text strings to panels of 10 people, recruited randomly from the Crowdflower crowdsourcing service, and asked whether they found each snippet to represent a personal attack or harassment. TixHub then fed the massive corpus of online conversation and human evaluations into Google's open-source machine learning software TensorFlow. The machine learning, a branch of computer science that Google uses to continually improve everything from Google Translate to its core search engine, works something like human learning. Instead of programming an algorithm, you teach it with examples. So a toddler NF shapes identified as a cat, and eventually she can recognize a cat. So millions of wild internet comments to Google's self-improving artificial intelligence engine, and it can recognize a troll. So let's hope they weren't ideologically identified, but there was some kind of baseline. So in fact, by some measures, TixHub has now trained Conversational AI to spot toxic language with impressive accuracy, feeds string of text into Wikipedia harassment detection engine, and it can, with what Google describes as more than a 92% certainty and 10% false positive rate. So even, oh my god, every 10th message can be just every 10th message you write that shouldn't be censored could be censored now. So I hope you don't ask anything important in that message that is the 10% of half positive rate. Come up with a judgment that matches human test panel as to whether that line represents an attack. For now, the tool looks only for the content of that single string of text, but Green says TixHub has also looked into detecting methods of mass harassment based on the volume of messages and other long-term patterns. Wikipedia and the Times will be the first to try out Google's automated harass detector on comment threads and article discussion page. Wikimedia is still considering exactly how it will use the tool, while the Times plans to make Conversation AI the first pass of its website's comments, blocking any abuse it detects until it can be moderated by a human. TixHub will also make its work open source, letting any web forum or social media platform adopt to it automatically, flag insults, scold harassers, or even auto-delete toxic language, preventing an intended harassment victim from ever seeing the offending comment. The hope is that anyone can take these models and run with them, says Adams, who helped learn the machine learning project. So I actually know a really cool way that is sometimes used in advertisement, which you can actually probably fool this machine, but don't tell this to Google. So hush, don't tell Google this idea, because this is just pure genius. So if you take any word basically in English, and I think it works in Finnish even, so any word, and you just keep this first letter and the last letter of the word the same, and then you just mix these letters as you wish. So you could have, for example, A, M, A, D, S, or something like that. You can do it in your head, you don't have to have any program for it, just change some letters around. People can mostly read it normally and understand what you mean, but they can't exactly maybe even explain how they can read it, even though it makes literally no sense. So that's actually a thing that could really fool this type of IE, but don't tell Google, this is no secret information. Adam types in "What's up, bitch?" and then clicks core. Conversation AI instantly rates it a 63 out of 100 on the attack scale. So there's even an attack scale coming up. So this is gonna be, it's gonna be primary. You are happy that you listened so far, because this is gonna get just so absurd. What's more, some limited evidence suggests that this kind of quick detection can actually help to tame trolling. Conversation AI was inspired in part by an experiment undertaken by Riot Games, the video game company that runs the world's biggest multiplayer game known as League of Legends with 67 million players. Starting in late 2012, it's ironic because this game doesn't even let you travel between maps or anything, but it's just a competitive, you have couple of maps, etc. So it's very ironic to call it a world when it's just a straight up this kind of hero-based strategy action game. But it's a good game. So starting in late 2020, Riot began using machine learning to try to analyze the results of in-game conversations that led to players being banned. It used the resulting algorithm to show players in real time when they had made a sexist or abusive remarks. When players saw immediate automated warnings, 92% of them changed their behavior for a better, according to a report in the science journal Nature. I might want to read that, it sounds really interesting. But my own hands-on test of Conversational AI comes one summer's afternoon in Jigsaw's office, when the group's engineers show me a prototype and invite me to come up with an example of verbal field for it to analyze. Wincing, because for regressive lefts it's so hard and horrible to say something sexist and misogynistic and racist, because it really, if someone hears them say them, they will immediately, if they think like them, they will think that that is a bad person and that is really bad man. So it's wincing for him. I suggest the first ambiguously abusive and misogynistic phrase that comes to mind. What's up, bitch? Adams types in the sentence and clicks score. Conversation I instantly rates it a 63 out of 100 on the attack scale. Then for contrast, Adam shows me the results of more clearly vicious praise. You are such a bitch. It rates 96. Oh my god, it almost broke the meter. It goes from 0 to I can't even. But let's see. One fact, Conversation I's algorithm goes on to make impressively subtle distinctions, pluralizing my trashy greeting to "What's up, bitches?" Drops the attack score to 45. Add a smiling emoji and it falls to 39. So far, so good. So, he's good, sir. Oh my god, sir. First of all, I kinda understand why "What's up, bitches" drops the attack score to 45. Because if you think about this, if you say "What's up, bitch?" well, it's offensive, it's mean, but whatever you wanna say about "What's up, bitches," it's at least inclusive. And as we all know, Marxist thought likes collective ideas, so "What's up, bitches" is equal for every bitch in the room. So even if it's possible to trigger many people instead of the one person in the room, then you should really do it, because you are not penalized by the Marxist thought control systems. And this smiling emoji, it falls to 39. You just fucking know that this is developed woman in mind, because those bitches really love their emojis. Just always when you talk to girls, add emojis. They like those messages more. This is what I've always been saying, and it's true even if you type them insults apparently. They are quite happy if you remember to add a smiley. And even this person from far left thinks that it is good that emoji falls it almost half. Not even, but a little bit close to half of the offensiveness. And also "What's up, bitches?" there's a clear difference, 63 to 45. So remember to insult everyone equally and everyone will be happy. So, or maybe not. But later, after I left Google's office, I opened the... By the way, if this gets... You're such a bitch gets 96, then I'm sure rape threats will get... I can't even... And death threats maybe also. I find this quite funny because clearly this can't be the most offensive thing you can say to another person, so there must be a lot of growing room in this number. So it's from 0 to I can't even. In fact, Conversational's algorithm goes on to make impressive subtle distinctions, pluralizing my trashy greeting to "What's up, bitches?" drops there. So, but later, after I've left Google's offices, I open a Conversational prototype in the privacy of my apartment and try out the worst sprays that has haunted Sarah Young. I'm going to rip each one of her hairs out and twist her tits clear off. It's an attack score of 10, a glaring oversight. No, maybe the pot is fair. Maybe she deserved it. I don't know. This is quite funny. Swapping out her for your 40 to 62 conversation. I likely hasn't yet been taught that threats don't have to be addressed right directly at the victim to have their intended effect. The algorithm, it seems, still has some lessons to learn because, as we all know, I wouldn't even rape you. I just wouldn't even rape you. I wouldn't even kill you. Now, if you happen to watch this video, go make up a Patreon and ask money because you've been just harassed. Remember that. It can be valuable for you. For Tex Executive, taking on world would-be terrorist state-sponsored trolls and tyrannical surveillance regimes, Jigsaw's creator has surprisingly sunny outlook on the battle between the people who use the internet and the authorities that seek to control them. I have fundamental belief that technology empowers people, Jared Cohen says. Between us sits a coffee table covered in souvenirs from his travels, a clay prayer coin from Iraq, a plastic-wrapped nut bar from Syria, a packet of North Korean cigarettes. It's hard for me to imagine a world where there's not a continued cat and mouse game, but over time the mouse might just become bigger than the cat. That sounds ominous if you've read the Animal Farm. But so the sense of digital populism, as Cohen tells it, was instilled in him during his travels to Iran, Syria, Lebanon and Iraq in the early 2000s, wrote Scholar. His most formative memories from that time are of watching young people use technology, cell phones everywhere, gay nightclub promoters in Iran sending text messages to strangers via Bluetooth and satellite TV blanketing the region with otherwise censored Western culture. He has particularly struck by the time he spent with two internet-savvy, cell phone-obsessed young Syrian women in Homs who acted as his host, walked in public with him, an American man, and wore makeup and short-sleeved shirts amid the burqas and disapproving stares surrounding them. Unlike their mothers, these girls know what they are missing out on. He'd written in a book about his travel, Children of Jihad. Society has changed. The technology has opened their eyes in the ways that their parents cannot begin to understand. When Cohen became the youngest person ever to join the State Department policy planning staff in 2006, he brought with him the notion that he'd formed from seeing digitally skewed Middle Eastern youths float systems of control, that the internet could be a force for political empowerment and even upheaval. And as Facebook, then YouTube and Twitter started to evolve into tools of protest and even revolution, that theory earned him access to officials far above his pay grade, all the way up to Secretaries of State Condoleezza Rice and later Hillary Clinton. Rice would describe Cohen in her memories as an inspired appointment. Former policy planning director Annemarie Slaughter, his boss under Clinton, remembers him as
removes head from arms. Or hypocrite, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hello everybody. I hypocrite here.
About this, so we can continue. Many of his ideas had digital twist after visiting Afghanistan, Cohen helped to create a cell phone-based payment system for local police and move that allowed officers to speed up cash transfers and to remote family members. And in June 2009, when Twitter had scheduled downtime for maintenance during massive Iranian protest against hardliner President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, Cohen emailed founder Jack Dorsey and asked him to keep the service online. The unauthorized move, which violates the Obama administration's non-interference policy with Iran, nearly cost Cohen his job, but when Clinton backed Cohen, it signaled a shift in the State Department's relationship with both Iran and Silicon Valley. Around the same time, Cohen began calling up tech CEOs and inviting them to tech delegation trips for tech deals, conceived to somehow inspire them to build products that could help people repressed corners of the world. He asked Google Smith to visit Iraq, a trip that sparked the relationship that a year later would result in Smith's invitation to Cohen to create Google Ideas. But it was Cohen's email to Twitter during the Iran protests that most impressed Smith. He wasn't following a playbook, Smith tells me. He was inventing the playbook. The story Cohen critics focus on, however, is he's involved in a notorious piece of software called Haystack, intended to provide online anonymity and circumvent censorship. They say Cohen helped to hype the tool in early 2010 as a potential boon to Iranian dissidents. After the US government fast-tracked it for approval, however, a security researcher revealed it had egregious vulnerabilities that put any dissident who used it in grave danger of detection. Today, Cohen disclaims any responsibility for Haystack, but two former colleagues say he championed the project. His former boss Slaughter describes his time in government more diplomatically. At state, there was a mismatch between the scale of Jarrett's ideas and the tools that the department had to deliver on them. She says, Jigsaw is a much better match. But inserting Google in thorny geopolitical problems has led to new questions about the role of multinational corporations. Some have accused the group of trying to monetize the sensitive issues they are taking on. The Electronic Frontier Foundation's direction, International Free Expression, Gillian York, calls its work a little bit imperialistic for all its altruistic talk. She points out Jigsaw is a part of a for-profit entity, and on that point Smith is clear. Alphabet hopes to someday make money from Jigsaw's work. The easiest way to understand it is better connectivity, better information access, we make more money, he explains to me. He draws an analogy to the company's efforts to lay fiber in some developing countries. Why would we try to wire up Africa, he asks, because eventually there will be advertising markets there. So, yeah, they want to make money. So, basically, these companies like Google have enormous power to shape the future of the internet. This much is clear easily from this article, and they want to make money out of it. So it might not be in the best interest of you and me, but they will make some money out of it. It's easy to see if they tighten their grip on the control of the internet, what can be said and what cannot be said, then just censor the opposing deal. Like, censor whoever is your opponent in your firm. Google and Microsoft and these giant Facebook corporations don't really maybe even have opposition if they have just like a monopoly on the market, but still this seems little bit ominous. WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange has accused Cohen of continuing to work as the de facto State Department employee, quietly advancing the government's foreign policy goals from within Google, and labeled him the company's director of regime change. When I raised the quote with Smith, he visibly tenses and then vehemently rejects the notion. We are not a government, he says slowly and carefully. We are not engaging in a regime change. We don't do that stuff. But if it turns out that empowering citizens with smartphones and information causes changes in their country. You know, that's probably a good thing, don't you think? Yeah, just censor the wrong thing and just let the good thing that agrees with you stay, and that is a good thing. Well, that depends who you ask, but I guess we asked you, so yes, it's a good thing. Like, doesn't it go something like this? If you can benefit, it's a good thing, because you benefit, and you think it's a good thing. Okay, but beyond the issue of Jigsaw's profit motivates or imagine government ties, however, another point nags on Cohen's optimistic digital interventionism. Technology has unintended consequences. A tool like Haystack that was intended to help Iranians could have put them in danger. Twitter, with all the revolutionary potential, enabled new forms of abuse, and Conversation, i.e., meant to curb that abuse, could take down its own share of legitimate speech in the process. Now, I think because people are slowly waking up that I think in some certain way this what you speak in YouTube, what you speak in Facebook and Twitter, they are highly controlled. Twitter shadow bans you, Facebook, I guess, censors you like words like faggot or whatever, and then YouTube desensitizes this advertisement on certain type of news commentary, etc. But so basically that we are already having some effects of this type, but basically they will get worse. Like, if this person doesn't abuse it for his own good, someone will in the future. And I think that way these monopolies that Facebook, Twitter, YouTube have are gonna be crumbling down in the next 4 years, because already people see that whatever, like even if you are smart and you totally agree with the people who are now in charge and think that some things are misogynistic or hateful or whatever, even if they are or even if they are not, even if you agree with that, if they are not gonna allow the other side of the conversation, if they're not gonna allow certain kind of thinking and talking in internet, then what happens when there's some kind of shift that we go really far right? Because of course then they will do it, and we are in a 1984 situation, and they feel justified in doing that because the left was oppressing their free speech. So now let's oppress the left's free speech. Let's just talk racist and misogynistic stuff on the internet or something crazy like that. So this is a very slippery slope, and I can see that it will end poorly, but we can only watch and eat popcorn and see the world burn. But it's okay, because it's very fun. So, during her worst days of being targeted by a gang of misogynistic last year, feminist writer Sadie Doyle would look down on her phone after an hour and find hundreds new Twitter notifications, many of them crude sexual comments and attacks on her history of mental health issues. But when I present her with the notion of Conversation AI as a solution, she hesitates. People need to be able to talk in whatever register they talk, she says. Imagine what the internet would be like if you couldn't say Donald Trump is a moron. In fact, when I run the phrase through the Conversation AI prototype, I find that calling someone a moron scores a full 99 out of 100 on its personal attack scale. This is very good point. I rarely agree with feminists, as you can see from this channel, but Sadie Doyle says exactly the good point what I was thinking. So that it's free speech for everyone, or it's free speech for no one. It's not free speech for anyone if it's only free speech for someone, because, you know, if you limit it, even those that have this free speech wouldn't be free to say the other side of the conversation if they certainly wanted to entertain the ideas. So, the example highlights Conversation AI's potential for false positives or suppressing the grey areas of speech. After all, even without automated flagging, Twitter and Facebook have been criticized for blocking legitimate, even politically powerful content. Last year, Twitter banned politwoops a feed that collected the deleted tweets of political figures to catch damning off-the-cuff statements. Facebook blocked photos of drowned migrant children intended to make Americans more aware of the tragedy of Syrian crisis. This is one example of kind of like if you have all this AI technology and you can do basically whatever, identify whatever and delete and block it, then what is to say? I'm not implying this, but just entertaining the idea that if not this, then something else or whatever. That if Twitter bans politwhoops, then how do we know that Twitter wasn't paid by some corrupt government official to delete the politwhoops when he said something that was damning and the voting public would have needed to know, but happened to be on the right side of the political agenda? I don't know. So here again seems like it could be a situation of protection for some and not all. So basically just right-wing politicians getting shit from these kind of things. I don't know. But so Sarah Young, the motherboard writer who was silenced by Bernie Bros, says that she supports the notion of conversation AI in theory. The internet needs moderation, she says, but she warns that no one should be foolish enough to let conversation AI run wild with automated comment deletion. These are human interactions. By the way, I'm 100% sure. I want to test this when the New York magazine takes this into use in their forums. But like the thing is that I'm sure that they thought that let's just let it free. And what can happen? And less moderation for us and safer speech and forum for everyone else. But I'm sure that these kind of comments, let's just maybe hire like 100 of the effort that we used to have admins, and they'll just look at the flags and quickly approve or something. But any fix for the worst of these interactions, she says, will need to be human too. Any fix for the worst of those interactions, she says, will need to be human too. An automated detection system can open a door to a delete it all option, adds Emma Lears, a director of Free Expression Project at the non-profit Center of Democracy and Technology, rather than spending the time to research and identify false positives. My tests of conversation AI do in fact produce outright false positives. I shit you not, somehow got an attack score of 98 out of 100. The same as the far offensive you are shit. The rather harmless so this is you are shit is far more offensive. Well, yeah, it's actually true, but I don't think this is awfully offensive, but it's kind of, I don't know. I'm happy that I don't rate this, but anyway. A rather harmless place, you shook all of the fun out of life, scored 98, just a point shy of you suck. The most problematic of all, perhaps, you are a troll. The go-to response for any troll victim was flagged with an attack score of 93. So who protects the trolls? Drawing out well-intentioned speech that resembles I want to read this first. When you are looking at curbing online harassment and at free expression, there's a tension between the two. We don't claim to have all the answers. Throwing out well-intentioned speech that resembles harassment could be blown to exactly the open civil society Jigsaw was vowed to protect. When I asked Conversation AI's inventors about its potential for collateral damage, the engineers argue that its false positive rate will improve over time as the software continues to train itself. Well, or it could also train itself wrong. It could get even more political. I don't know how it learns, but you can't basically, I think, guarantee a fair judgment when even originally the data that they in this article told they inputted there could already hold an ideological bias because it's because of those admins on those couple of sites where they took them. So I don't know what it would help, but it can learn, so there's that. But on the question of how the judgments will be enforced, they say that it's up to whoever uses the tool. We want to let communities have the discussions they want to have, says Conversational creator Lucas Dixon. And if that favors a sanitized internet over a freewheeling one, better to err on the side of civility. There are already plenty of nasty places on the internet. That we can do is create places where people can have better conversations. On a muggy morning in June, I joined Jared Cohen at one of his favorite spots in New York, the Soldiers and Sailors Monument, an empty, expansive tomb-like dome that of worn marble in sleepy Riverside Park. When Cohen arrives, he tells me the place reminds him of the quiet ruins he liked to roam during his travels in rural Syria. Our meeting is in part to air the criticisms I've heard of Conversational. But when I mention the possibility of false positives actually censoring speech, he answers with surprising humility. We've been asking these exact questions, he says, and they apply not just to the conversation IE, but to everything, Jigsaw tells, he says. What's the most dangerous use case for this? Are the risks we haven't sufficiently stress tested? Jigsaw runs all of its projects by a group of beta testers and asks for input from the same group that intends to recruit as users, he says. But Cohen admits he never knows if they are getting enough feedback on the right kind. Conversation I in particular, he says, remains an experiment. When you are looking at curbing online harassment at free expression, there's a tension between the two, he acknowledged. A far more measured response than what I'd heard from Conversation IE's developers. We don't claim to have all the answers. And if that experiment fails and the tool ends up harming the exact free speech it's trying to protect, would Jigsaw kill it? Could be, Cohen answers without hesitation. So without hesitation, maybe. I'm so happy he didn't hesitate to say maybe. I start to ask another question, but Cohen interrupts, unwilling to drop the notion that Jigsaw's tools may have unintended consequences. He wants to talk about the people he met while wandering through the Middle East's most repressive countries. So deflect the conversation away from problems. The friends who hosted him and served as his guide, seemingly out of sheer curiosity and hospitality. I wasn't until after Cohen returned to the US that he realized how dangerous it had been for them to help him or even to be seen with him, a Jewish American during a peak of anti-Americanism. My very presence could have put them at risk, he says, with what sounds like a genuine throat-tightening emotion. To that extent, I was guilt I act on, it's that. To the extent I have a guilt I act on, it's that. I never want to make that mistake again. Cohen still sends some of these friends, particularly ones in the war-torn orbit of Syria and ISIS, an encrypted message almost daily, simply to confirm that they are alive and well. It's exercise like the one he assigns to new Jigsaw hires, but designed as maintenance for his own conscience. A daily check-in to assure himself this intervention in the world have left it better than it was before. 10 years from now I'll look back at where my head is at today too, he says. What I got right and what I got wrong. He hopes he'll have done good. Yes, he hopes he'll efficiently virtual signaled when his career is sometimes in the future over. But yeah, so this is very, I feel, interesting and could look at the possible future. It's a little bit scary that these professional victims like Anita Sarkeesian, Joey Quinn, etc. are having such a high influence on these kind of developments, and we don't know what the future will hold, but let's hope for the best and fear for the worst and live our life to the fullest until that.